Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn year. It is day 77 of my comic review video day calendar. And you know, how a normal person gets up in the morning and goes downstairs and kisses someone goodbye and goes to a job, and on their lunch break, they read a Batman comic, but the likeness is not Michael Keaton because you couldn't really read a comic with Michael Keaton looking like Batman unless you were looking at the graphic novelization of Batman 89 or Batman Returns. You know. You know what I'm talking about. No? Well, it doesn't matter now. Now you don't have to be a normal person because you can just read Batman 89 #1. Isn't that fantastic? You actually could read all 6 of these if you had them, or you could look at them in digital. I only own the first issue, even though I have read most of this. I'll explain all of this. My history with this, my experience with this book is very strange. And my being the giant 89 fan I am, and how extremely excited I was when this finally happened because it was in limbo forever. It looked like DC was never going to publish this, and they finally did in 2021. It's very strange that I haven't reviewed this yet, and that's for a couple of weird reasons. Honestly, I didn't think it ever finished and only discovered somewhat recently that the 6th issue actually came out. This is a 6-issue miniseries. It comes out along with kind of a companion book that's also a 6-issue miniseries for Superman based on those movies. So you had Superman 78, you had Batman 89, and if memory serves, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole thing starts with Joe Quinones. I'm pretty sure it's the same artist that originally pitched this. So you had an artist who was trying to get DC to agree to let him publish a book based on Batman 89. Was pretty sure that people would love it and that it would sell well, just like Batman 66 book had. And for whatever reason, he turned in some really cool concept art, and DC decided not to go forward with that. And eventually, well after the Batman 66 book was done, they went ahead and greenlit that and also the Superman book. And weirdly, I ended up liking the Superman book a lot more than the 89 book, even though I think this first issue is really quite good and is very much in, or at least for the most part, feels like it fits really, really well into the world of Batman 89. It's got a real authentic feel and flavor for that, and then as it moves along, it kind of gets away from that, I feel like, and it starts to feel a lot more like Batman Returns than 89. And sure, those two things are related in the same continuity, but it feels much more, and I've always felt like Batman Returns kind of pivots and goes its own direction. It doesn't feel as much like it fits in that same continuity. Obviously, Forever and Batman and Robin, even a lot more so. That's a real soft reboot sort of thing, and the idea with this book is that this is a direct sequel to Batman Returns and ignores Forever and Batman and Robin. But with this first issue, it would be really easy to think that it's ignoring Returns too. Maybe there are a couple of references to that I didn't notice that I'm missing here. But then very quickly it starts to bring in Catwoman and references Shrek and also just tonally, the weirdness of it, the kind of bombastic nature of it, it starts to feel a lot more like Batman Returns. Now, it's been a while since I've read those issues, so I may have a different opinion, a different experience with it when I finally sit down and review all that. And I really should be doing that right now, but I'm doing this silly exercise where I'm only reviewing a single issue each day. So I'm going to try not to belabor and get belabor that and get too caught up in the stuff I haven't read in a while and the disappointment I had with the rest of this book, because I might feel differently finally getting it all together. And I honestly cannot remember if I ever even finished it. I don't think I've read that last issue, but it's been a while and some of this just isn't sticking with me. So besides this first issue, so I'm going to talk, ins and outs of what it was like looking at this for the first time and how I feel about it now, of course, but I'm just going to talk about this first issue. But like I said, I didn't realize that it ever finally finished. I thought it was sitting there. We would never get a last issue. I I believe the way the story goes, and again, correct me if I'm wrong about this. If anybody knows, I think the deal was because it took a whole year for this to finally finish. This begins in the summer of 2021, and it finishes up in July. I think it starts in August 2021, July 2022. It takes almost 12 months to finish a 6-issue miniseries, and the issues were coming out more or less on time up through I think issue 4 maybe, and then it took longer for 5, and it took forever for 6 to come out. And I think Quinones got sick and was having a hard time getting the art finished for the last couple of issues. And this was, of course, right in the middle of COVID, and I think he got COVID, and it was a pretty rough case of it, is what I remember reading. But again, it's been a while. I may be incorrect about that. I own, weirdly, only the first issue of this, and I bought several copies with different covers, which I rarely do with stuff, but I really liked these covers. I collect Batman 89, and I thought, with this, I'll be selective. I won't buy every single cover, but I'll get the ones I really like. And I think I bought 4, but I only have 3 sitting here for whatever reason. I'm not sure where that other one is, but I've got the cover that I showed you in the first place. I just kind of picked that up arbitrarily. This is sort of like a movie poster cover that shows you major characters that are going to appear through this whole thing. So you've got Batman, of course, looking kind of straight out of that first movie, like he's looking at the Joker in the the chemical plant. And then you've got Catwoman toward the bottom. You've got who the person that will be our new Robin at the top, kind of looks like a Mortal Kombat character, and he's a brand new character that is a kind of a amalgamation of a couple of Robins, I think. His first name is Drake. I think his name is, what is it, Drake Wilson, maybe? Winston, that's what it is. And I can't speak much to that right now because he just appears at the very end of this issue. Not a ton is done with him yet. And then you've got Barbara Gordon, who is dating and becomes engaged to, is we're seeing on this page here actually, to Harvey Dent, the Billy D. Williams Harvey Dent, who is, as you can see, full of charm and charisma, even as a drawing. Then this is the regular cover, which was one of the first things that we saw for this series that immediately put my mind at ease and got me very excited about reading this. Look at the wingspan. You've got your classic Michael Keaton Batman dropping down from the sky, like at the beginning of 89, where he fights the thugs on the roof, and the architecture is very much on point, where you've got the skyscrapers that go up to the heavens, like the end of that movie. And I love the A cover. I think he did just a wonderful job on that. And then you have another cover with Billy D. Williams' Two-Face. And so you've got a lot of stuff with a couple of these covers that we don't even see happen yet in the book. Just, foreshadowing things or things that you kind of expect to happen. You figure, if Billy D. Williams, Harvey Dent is in this, we're probably going to finally get to see him as Two-Face. And it might have been cool not to see it until it actually happens in the book. But I loved this cover too much not to buy it, and was really excited about just how good he looks as Two-Face, because I always, like a lot of people, wanted to see that happen on screen. So, like I said, the first issue is feels very much like a direct sequel to 89, and it's kind of odd, some of the things that aren't in Returns, if this is also a sequel to Returns. Like, all of a sudden, we've got the Joker's gang showing up without the Joker. And I'm like, where were they in Batman Returns? You had the circus gang, but as far as I understand it, that was a different thing. That was ultimately the Penguin's gang, or a gang that the Penguin kind of co-opted and took for himself. By the way, a quick aside, I love the purple in the cape. That, of course, is not from the movie, but that is a really cool embellishment that I really want an action figure of that. I'll say I like the art here a great deal. This is all I wanted as a kid. Was more 89 and a and this stuff rendered in comic book form beyond, again, just graphic novelizations. I think Quinones is just absolutely nailing the style and the atmosphere, while also moving ahead with it and doing some things in comics that you of course wouldn't necessarily do in a movie. Does this feel like the first part, the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of an actual sequel to that movie versus a kind of comic adaptation, or not adaptation, but a comic story set in the same universe? I don't know. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think with this first issue, I could totally see that maybe, and then as it goes along, again, it really doesn't feel like a movie to me. But we'll see how I feel like about it, as I move forward. I should mention that this is, if I haven't mentioned it already, written by Sam Hamm, which I think even before this was announced, I always said on camera that I'd really like to see Sam Hamm come back to write this comic if it ever got made, and I was really shocked that it actually happened. It was kind of a dream come true. And given that, and if you're not familiar with Sam Hamm, he wrote the original draft for Batman 89, which I have reviewed and really like, and I think it's a lot better than the movie we have, even as much as I still love that film. It's just about more stuff. It feels a little bit more it feels a little bit more in line with the source material, especially tonally. It's kind of like an 80s Englehart story, and it's about 80s commercialism and materialism in a way that is a lot more brought to the forefront. Not too in your face and preachy about it. Just there's social commentary about that stuff, and it's a much more in the background and easy to miss in the actual movie as we have it. Well, with this, like I said, in the later issues, he's kind of leaning more into the sensibilities of Returns, which is weird because he didn't write that movie. Like, very little of, and I don't like his script for Batman 2, but very little of what he put in his script made it to Batman Returns, to the point that I don't even think he's credited for story at all. Maybe he is, I can't remember. But I was a little bit perplexed that he decided to steer so much into that. I really thought he would go a lot more in the direction of where he was with the 89 script, and maybe with his own Batman 2 script, and make this a lot more of kind of a sequel, as much as he could get away with, to the movie he wrote, as opposed to the movie that we have. And you can see a little bit of that, particularly with social commentary stuff. Like, there's some classism and racial tensions with this that I never expected to see in this continuity, just based on what we have with 89. Like, you have a Harvey Dent at the beginning of that movie that is a black man, played by a black actor. We never call attention to his race. We never talk about it, but then he doesn't get a whole lot of screen time anyway. And this gives us a kind of a glimpse at a backstory for him, where he comes from in urban environment, kind of, a projects area, if you will, of Gotham, and he is a self-made man who has really come up in the ranks, and he's kind of a like poor black kid who grows up and is able to get into the like rich white man's political arena. And I say that because we don't see any other minority groups, and because he kind of talks about it like that. Like, he has to keep up appearances. He talks about wearing a mask, kind of like Batman does, but of course a metaphorical one, where he has to keep up appearances, and he has to walk the walk and talk the talk. He's got to wear really fancy clothes and drive fancy cars, but that's not really who he is at the core, and he's still standing up for This is the scene where he's talking about all of this with kind of his mentor on the streets. Uh, and at first I thought maybe this was like an uncle or his father or something, but I think it's kind of a father figure that he had growing up. And I'm not sure what his parentage is. We don't really talk about that, or not that I noticed. And this guy gives him the coin that he's flipping all the way from the very beginning, and it's a little bit like the way the coin is used pre Two-Face in The Dark Knight, with kind of the "I make my own luck" sort of thing. He really kind of flaunts it and uses it in this. More to kind of drive the point home that if he really wants something, he's going to find a way to get it. He kind of doesn't take no for an answer. He is a risk taker, and he's always taken charge. He's always proactive, and he's the most kind of go get him, kind of character in the room, and he gets that from this guy who when we meet him in this flashback, says he's basically trying to get this kid to really believe in himself and to go after his dreams. And he says, "I'm gonna flip this coin, and if it's heads, you're gonna be a big man." And the coin has heads on both sides, and the kid. This guy says never thought to even question whether it was a two-sided coin. Never looked at the other side. And Harvey says, "Well, no, I just trusted you." And it's a real nice, heartfelt scene. I really like this Harvey right away. He seems consistently characterized with what little we got from him in the movie. Seems kind of based more on Billy D. Williams' real life personality, or the kinds of characters that he tends to play, more than he is really based on a character that we didn't get a whole lot from initially. Well, anyway, Harvey is doing a couple of really interesting things here, and we've got some major departures right away from standard comic book source material. It's really fun seeing the way that Sam Hamm is reinventing all of this, and I wonder if some of this would have ever been in the movies or not. It's kind of hard to say. Like, is he kind of going back, in the annals of history, and saying, like, if I was to write a sequel back in '89 or the early '90s, this is what I would have written? Or is he inspired by things within the last 30 years or so? Like how much influence does he have from just getting older and seeing the world change? Like is this, can we argue this feels enough like a story that would have been told in that time period, or is this Batman '89 through the lens of 2021? I kind of have to say you be the judge, really. Like, with this first issue, it feels more or less like the first thing, and I think as it goes along, it starts to feel a little bit more like the second thing. But anyway, Harvey Dent is dating and ends up getting engaged at the beginning of this to Barbara Gordon, who is older than we usually see her. She is not Batgirl yet, if she'll ever become Batgirl. She doesn't in this series, I don't believe. And she is a sergeant. She's a police officer and doesn't have a very good relationship with her father. Her father, who is actively working with Batman and is kind of the only person on Batman's side, at least publicly, which is a major shift from where things seem to be going at the end of '89 and what it looks like into Batman Returns. End of '89, it's Harvey Dent himself who is reading Batman's letter that says, "If you ever need my help, don't hesitate to call again." And then Gordon says he gave us the signal, and he turns on the bat signal. In the second movie, Batman is walking right out in the open after he's like fought the circus gang pretty violently, I might add, and he's blowing them up and stuff. And he's right out in the open with lots of other cops, and nobody is questioning Gordon, talking to him and why he's there or anything. So he seems to have a pretty good relationship, maybe not just with Gordon, but with the force at large. And here, all of that has changed somewhere in the interim, I suppose. And one of the things that makes it feel like it's more a sequel to 89 than Returns, I guess. Although even at the end of 89, you get the sense that the police force is maybe going to get along with Batman moving forward. I guess you can't know for sure, just based on, well, we got the signal, and Gordon and Dent seem happy enough with the turn of events here that Batman dropped a bad guy off a roof and he died, and now we can count on this guy. That's how that always read to me. Well, now Dent wants to go after Batman because he is because not just because he is a vigilante that's taking the law into his own hands, but because Dent doesn't buy that Batman is what he looks like he is. By the way, sorry, I'm just distracted by this almost two-faced look, this kind of crazed look that Harvey Dent has while he's talking to Bruce Wayne here, where it looks like his face is contorted. He's almost, already two-faced in that scene. It's pretty cool. And the likeness is, I'm really glad that the rights were given. They were allowed to, or Quinones anyway, is allowed to actually make these characters look like the actors from the movie. He maybe goes a little bit too far with the eyebrows with Michael Keaton. Like, Michael Keaton has crazy eyebrows, and this is on point, but it's maybe even a little bit more exaggerated. I'm not sure how close the Alfred actually looks to Michael Goff, and maybe that's a character that they couldn't full on get the likeness to. Like, there's a little bit of that where here and there you'll have a character that doesn't actually look that much like the actor, but at least those two look really close. A little bit more here with Goff, I guess, but then Gordon, it looks like kind of standard the comic book Gordon, but just a little bit more heavy set. Doesn't look as much like the actor to me, but again, I don't know if the permission was given, because you have to go to the actor with these things usually, and some of these guys aren't even with us anymore, so I don't know who you'd have to go to get Goff's permission. And to be honest with you, I don't think Pat Hingle is still alive. I'm actually going to look that up real quick. I'm pretty sure yes, he passed away in 2009. That's what I thought. But I wanted to make sure, because I'd hate to claim that somebody had passed away and they're still with us, So, yeah, maybe there wasn't anybody you could go to make sure that they were okay with the likenesses. I don't know. Anyway, I'm jumping all over the place. So, the idea is Harvey thinks that that Gordon, who's been working with Batman, and everybody kind of knows it, has actually employed like a street task force of Batman's. That it's his own private army, and that he's kind of going around the law and has created a martial law of his own as a deterrent to crime, and to try to force the city to be more regulated. Pardon me, it's late at night. To have more law and order, and he's doing it in the most like anti due process way possible. And of course, that's not what's happening. But when he goes to Bruce Wayne for help, Bruce, classic mistaken identity stuff. Bruce claims that he agrees with Harvey on all of this, when of course, obviously, Harvey doesn't even know what's going on, and he says, but I can't go against Jim Gordon because he's my friend, I believe in him. And I really like the subtlety of this conversation where they're kind of feeling each other out, and at first you think that maybe the situation is going to be Bruce is going to play both sides and pretend like he's helping Harvey take down Batman. But when he doesn't immediately agree, Harvey says, "Well, you take your time if you want to. I guess if you don't mind, armed soldiers in the streets, or not armed soldiers, but soldiers like Batman in the streets." And he leaves, and it's kind of a weird, tense sort of conversation. So what then ends up happening is Harvey decides to put up or try to get a vote of no confidence against Jim Gordon because of the vigilanteism from Batman that he's supporting, and it looks like that's going to go through. And so and this was an interesting thing that I haven't seen a lot, where Gordon and Batman actually have their own like back channel way of communicating, where they're not using the signal together anymore, and they're kind of off on their own, operating independently without anybody really knowing. And he says, my time here as the commissioner is my days are numbered, and he ends up on this page destroying the radio that he's been using to talk to Batman. And I'm interested to see, because I don't remember now what happens with Gordon and where that whole thing goes. But yeah, just kind of an interesting take that I wouldn't expect. I don't remember if I talked about this already, because I've done I did another take of this earlier that I didn't like, so I ended up starting over. But I really like the purple cape with Batman, and some of the kind of liberties that Quinones takes. Like, I'd really like to have an action figure of that, and stuff like that, I think, kind of adds to the material and fits really well with this, even though that's not what it looked like with the movies. I like that inside Wayne Manor, we're in that kind of kitchen area where Bruce and Vicky had dinner after the "Can you pass the salt?" scene, and it looks just like it, except it's got a TV now. So Quinones like really knows that movie, and he's looking at all the sets and the architecture. Of course, the car looks wonderful. Another thing that makes it feel like a direct sequel to 89, like Returns doesn't matter yet, is you've got the Joker gang, and they are at the beginning, Batman stops them from knocking over an armored car, and this is kind of the inciting incident that sets Dent off, because Batman stops them from stealing like $31 million, but Dent says he cost $26 million in property damage, so who cares? And he's maybe causing more problems than he's solving. And anyway, I kind of wonder where they've been. I really like bringing these jackets back with the playing cards that denote rank and all of that. Like, it's fun to see this iconography again, but I wonder where they were in Batman Returns, if they're still around right now. And I don't know if they show up again, or I just don't remember, or if that's just kind of getting our palate wet and getting us back into this universe. But anyway, it's an interesting setup, and then at the end here, Batman ends up meeting the kid that will become Robin, who's already kind of wearing his Robin suit, and this is a little bit like the Robin that you had in the Sam Hamm script. I guess both of them, because you've got a Robin at the end of the first one that's kind of tacked on real quick, and then he shows up a little bit earlier in the second script, but I think it's a real similar sort of situation where he's a street kid who's kind of helping Batman out from the shadows. And in this case, it's not Dick Grayson, it's a black kid that, again, he's kind of created from the ground up, and I assume that the social commentary with racial issues and urban upheaval and all of that is going to maybe play into this kid's backstory, and I'm sure it's going to be connected to Harvey Dent's background and how he's feeling about crime in Gotham and all of that. And it's a fine setup for all of that. The two big things that I expected to see somewhere in this book, well, three, that, and I knew for sure that was going to happen, but then also Batman on horseback, because he tries to put that in both of those scripts, and I don't think that actually ends up happening anywhere in this book, but I haven't read that last issue, I don't think. And then the other thing is the Batman Year One thing, which we've had in a movie now, but he'd also tried to put this, I think, in both scripts, or at least the first one, but the thing with all the bats flying around Batman when he presses a button and does the sonar, and I really expected that to show up somewhere here too, and I don't know that it does anywhere either ultimately, but yeah, so some interesting, differences in status quo from what you would expect from source material, and some things that feel a little arbitrary, kind of changed just for the sake of change. Like you would expect, sort of like Joker being the person that kills Batman's parents. You certainly would expect some departures and some things that might look arbitrary and in the first place, just in being adapted for the big screen, but sometimes the choices, I'm not sure if you would make them for a movie or why exactly. Like, I don't know why you would go necessarily in specifically the 89 continuity for an older Barbara Gordon. It's a cool idea, and having her date Harvey is interesting, but I guess the point I'm making is, these are cool changes, but you could make them in any continuity. Like, why specifically the 89 continuity? And I'd kind of love to know where those things come from. Maybe I would appreciate this better if I knew that some of these were ideas that Hamm had all the way back then, or mandates that Warner Brothers would have had for certain characters. And because it's not like everything is changed just because it's a movie now instead of a comic. Alfred is kind of what you would expect from Alfred from the comics. The Joker is kind of is too. We have to give him a backstory, and he killed Batman's parents, but he's not like this completely different looking character. But then you've got a Robin that is a brand new made up character with a very different costume. But I also could kind of see that happening with these movies, because the standard, kind of like shorts and short sleeve shirt look, of course, we wouldn't have done. We would have had to change that and modernize it in some way. I don't know if it would have been like a hoodie like this. But yeah, so I would expect some changes, of course, but they don't always scream specifically the 89 continuity to me, but I really like the artwork, and I think I like it better than the story. Is just that Sam Hamm is making some kind of odd choices that I'm not immediately getting why he's doing what he's doing. I've talked about this for way too long, because at some point I'm gonna do the whole series. And anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back again real soon with another one. And I was Captain Logan. Happy reading. Bye, folks.